Mr. Brown's stream. He's handed over partial control of the mic to me, Commander Culture, for this portion of the evening, and so I thought I'd introduce him and then myself. We're here to talk all things culture, all things pop culture, and we are going to have a fun evening. So if you're interested in joining the conversation, you can obviously pop into the comments, the chat there live, and Mr. Brown will put it up on the screen for us to discuss and debate.
I will indeed.
Yeah. So it's been about a week. Trying to think what's gone on in this past week. One of the big pieces of news stateside is this weather. I don't know what kind of weather you're having there in the United Kingdom, but in parts of the United States and the other parts of the Northern Hemisphere, we're getting very unseasonably cold weather. I think it might have even knocked our friend Doomcock off the air down there around Austin parts, because I haven't heard from him.
It has been up until the beginning of the week. Hello, everybody in the chat. It was very, very cold over here. We had a wind coming from Europe, and it was very, very cold. It's been relatively mild this week, but breezy. Today's not bad, but breezy. But yes, Texas has been struggling. No electric and heating for them because of their how they've got their effectively their national grid organized in Texas. Is that correct?
Yes. And you know, it was interesting because myself and the missus were sort of speaking about Texas energy policy a couple of weeks ago. We're a very exciting couple. And you know, normally Texas does very, very well, especially in the hot summers. You know, dealing with all the air conditioners going on and stuff. It's a very well organized grid. If you've read up on it, Mr. Brown, but over the last couple of years, it's what's the word? It's become vulnerable. Obviously, when you think of Texas, you think of oil, you think of natural gas, but they've made a shift over to renewable energy, which apparently is not very renewable in the middle of a blizzard. And all of their solar panels kicked off, all of their wind turbines had to shut down. But the biggest news in all of that was apparently, and I'm not an expert in the oil industry,
yeah.
But when you send natural gas through pipelines from the source out to the customers, what you traditionally do is that you use the gas that's going through there to keep your flow going, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, what these Green New Deal people, they call themselves, I guess, in the United States, the environmental SJWs going back a few years, said, well, we want to eliminate as much natural gas out of our grid system as we can. So for those relay stations where normally we just pull a little natural gas out of the pipeline and use that to keep the relay stations going, we're going to make it electric, because that can then be powered by the solar and wind turbines that we're promoting.
Right, okay,
However, when you do that, I mean, natural gas is going to flow at negative 50 degrees. It doesn't matter. But when you turn it over to electric, it's going to shut down that whole system. So even the natural gas, which under normal circumstances, or 10 or 20 or 40 years ago would have been flowing, now it shuts down. So nobody gets gas, nobody's getting electricity, and then on top of that, you had the problem with the nuclear reactor shutting down. I guess there are a total of 2 plants with a total of 4 reactors in Texas. I was just talking with a scientist from Texas, of all places, today, and he was sort of explaining it to me, and I'm nodding my head going, But they had to shut down one of those reactors to keep the whole plant sort of from going screwy. And I'm not going to even bother getting into the details, but suffice it to say that Texas is now basically running off of the power of 3 nuclear reactors and not much else, which isn't good. However, I'm told that the weather forecast for the next couple of days is supposed to go up, and everything will be getting back to normal. However, there have been a few deaths, billions of dollars in lost productivity and damage to the grid systems and stuff.
And
So.
Doomcock's stream gone down.
Doomcock's stream gone down. What are we supposed to do for entertainment this week? You know, I mean, we've got Gary and we've got Mr. Brown, but you know, not much else.
I thought he was in the center of the earth. Surely snowstorms doesn't affect him.
Well, that's what I thought, but I've gathered from, you know, my own minions, right? Because, you know, we have to keep an eye on our competitors. He's a supervillain. I'm a supervillain. We have different aims, but my sources tell me that he has a substation or like a portal to the center of the earth somewhere in the Austin region of Texas. I could be completely wrong, but that's what my sources tell me. So, yeah.
It's all a lie.
Well, you know, I don't know. I just hope that those lizard men that he always talks about don't come out, or if they do, that they have, you know, beautiful lizard women. So
can he not burn some of his super chats to keep warm?
Let them eat super chats, he says. You know, I don't know. We should mail him some firewood though, because I heard he does have a PO box.
Yeah, just send him lots of dollars. He can burn the grubby ones, as it were.
I think all the dollars are grubby.
That'll keep him warm.
Yeah. I think all the dollars are grubby. That you know, that's. Oh boy, we could talk economics. We'd put your whole audience to sleep. But let me see. Oh, there's people talking in here. Hail from the third world. Sklavko, hello there, my friend. I keep hearing from you every week, and it's nice to.
There's our number one.
Hear that. Let's see. Nuclear reactor shutdown. Yes, Mr. Captain Cockney Spock. If that is the real Cockney Spock, looks like a right colonialist there. There was
Jones. Cricket. Yeah, some of the times, mate. Not all the time, you know, but you know.
There was, you know, it was a maintenance type thing. In order to keep in order to keep the plant running, they had to shut down one of the reactors to keep the other reactor, you know, warm and going. I'm not again an expert of any kind, but this is what this scientist fellow was telling me. So no, it's not a Fukushima type of thing. It's a standard sort of. It's like what they would do in a maintenance type of routine. Although they hadn't accounted for it, and it was in the middle of a complete power crunch. But you know, with nuclear power, you can't just turn it on and off. You have to really be ahead of the game to prevent stuff like Chernobyl from happening. So they did that.
Captain Cockney Spot says he can burn his car of June dolls.
Oh no! Those are going up. He can sell them on eBay, make $1 million, and then he can burn that $1 million. Because what somebody was saying, that Amazon stopped selling the Cara Dune dolls, and Hasbro stopped making them, and you know, pretty much it's going to be the next currency. You know, how many Cara Dune dolls do you have? Oh, I have 10. Wow, you're a millionaire.
Do you think that Disney has said stop producing these and told Hasbro we will take all the stock?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think you know. I don't. Okay. Again, I am, you know, jack of all trades but master of none. I'm not a high-powered business attorney type person either. But I don't think that a company like Hasbro could turn on a dime, turn its production on a dime like that, and just say, well, we're just going to, you know, shut everything off. It's not like they saw on social media, oh, Cara Dune got fired. She's not going to be on the show anymore. Quick, everyone shut it down. Or even that they said, well, we heard her say something bad or that many of our customers might disagree with or something. Let's shut it all down. They couldn't do it that quickly. It sounds to me like Disney pulled the license and probably had to pay up for the product that was already made, just waiting to ship. That's my guess. Yeah. Oh, 1,000 rose ticos for a fifth of a Cara Dune. That's a pretty good exchange rate, actually. That's a pretty good exchange rate. I saw with my own eyes the rose tico dolls on deep discount on the shelf. And I mean, what are you going to do with? I saw one person buying them, and I said, "What are you doing with that?" And he said, "It's a cheap dog toy. It's cheaper than buying the tennis ball. You know, you just throw that thing, and the golden retriever goes after it." So, yeah.
I think I may have dropped off the stream then. I do apologize.
Oh, okay. I was here, I think.
Good.
uh,
So for the people at
but
home, it would have appeared that you were speaking. So yeah, I think I dropped off then.
no.
My internet. Oh, I'm like Cockney Spock. It's like we're in the third world. The speed is so slow. Ugh.
The internet there. But before it goes off the thing, I saw that Real Jones up there had mentioned something about nuclear being the best green, and I would tend to agree with that. Of course, it all depends on who's running it. If you have a bunch of clowns in charge of your nuclear reactor,
What about
like
the disposal though?
Um, disposal can be done better now. My research indicates, because I do have just kind of a passing nerd interest in power of all kind, it is that the kind of reactors that they can make now, but that almost nobody is, except experimentally, has very little in the way of waste. Not like, you have giant, huge cores
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But what we have in the world now are second and third generation reactors that are still using those large fuel rods that still need massive amounts of cooling and stuff like
Right.
that. And they can't build. They're not allowed. The power companies, the inventors, are not allowed to build the better, newer, supremo clean, fourth and fifth generation nuclear power plants because it has a bad name. That's the
Everybody wants
non-conspiracy
to go
theory.
green as well, don't they?
Yeah, well, they want to go. That's the thing I always say. It's like I'm okay with going green. I consider myself quite the conservationist, not really an environmentalist because that's more of a religion. But if you want to go green, go nuclear. Talk to me about how you can do safe and smart nuclear. And if you're not talking about nuclear as one of a basket of options for green, then you're not serious about green.
Cockney says nuclear waste has a half-life of only 10,000 years. It's fine. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
It depends on the kind of nuclear waste that you have. Yeah, and that's why it's something that you have to take seriously. That you have to have a plan for, and we don't have very good plans for these kind of
Real
things.
Honis, new reactor use lower active radioactive. So
There you go. Yeah,
so
he's
they
up
must
on
be
it.
more efficient. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Getting back to the Cara Dune.
Yeah.
My point is, before I popped off, was Disney will have a massive. They will effectively buy all the stock from Hasbro, what's being produced
Mm-hmm.
of the dolls that are not going out, store them, and then at a later date sell them at artificially inflated prices to fund their business that's going down.
Well, you give them more credit than I would. I think that they'll just
Yes.
pull like an Atari ET,
Landfill.
situation with those where they just dump them in a landfill and then somebody will find them and sell them at a premium, but it probably won't be Disney. But I think you are right about them. I'm sure they have a contractual obligation to buy, X, thousands or millions of units. And Hasbro's like, hey, man, we already made them. They're just waiting to ship. You've got to pay, buy us out. So, they will. And
Do you think it's financial suicide, all this stuff that's gone
on? Yeah, it is. I mean, it's. I don't know. I don't even think they're thinking finances. I think that what you have MBAs and you have accountants in these corporations whose heads have probably long since exploded and their neck stumps have been on fire for the last, 2 or 3 years, going, what in God's name are you doing? You're throwing away $1 billion franchise, just like throwing it in the blender and flushing the blender down the toilet.
Yeah.
And they just sort of gleefully, grow fatter on this sort of money being dumped at them, hoping that they'll come up with a better product. It's really what it's exposed, the not just the ideological bent of Hollywood. Everyone sort of knew that, but it just their incompetence, their sheer incompetence. They can't make a good product, because now you see them kind of, before the coof came along, they were sort of smiling and yeah, I mean, people are buying it. Now they're like, you can see the sweat on their brow, the flop sweat, as they try to sort of, I think we can actually do this. And you find out that they're no better at writing stories than your, garden variety third grader.
Right.
And it's the get woke go broke type thing, just sort of writ over an entire industry. They're in an echo chamber. Real Jones says they don't want to hear fans. They don't.
They
They
don't
don't.
know.
They don't acknowledge fans. It's kind of like, I mean, who are the
Sorry,
fans?
customers.
We're paying customers.
Yeah, customers.
But look, here's the thing though, and I like that Gary said that, but or was it Doomcock? I don't remember. One of those two lovely gentlemen. But you can only have customers if you are in a capitalist system. And we're every day trending much further and further away from that. When you talk about fans, who were the fans of Soviet literature? Like literally nobody. But who had to read that? Everyone in the Soviet Union. It was what was being offered. So this is what we're being offered. We're being offered just absolute dreck, and we're told we have to accept this.
Have you seen what Cruel Birab says? Some theorize that Disney has been buying their own stock to inflate the prices and maybe $100 billion in debt.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez.
I would definitely believe both of those for completely different reasons. A lot of companies have been buying their own stock to more or less legal ends. It's a highly unethical practice, and in some ways it's barred by law, but a lot of companies have been getting around that, and that's basically what they've been doing with their stimulus money. Whether they get it from the government or whether they get it from the quantitative easing that goes on, and they've just been pumping it right back into their own companies with the blessing of the central banks in America and Britain and other places, because it makes the stock market look bigger. So Disney looks bigger. Disney has more money to blow. And the $100 billion in debt, that's entirely possible, especially with like bonds that they've put out that will be coming due. And that was, and Disney, it didn't have to be that way. Disney was, as far as my memory goes, at least up through the, what was it? The Eisner, was he the CEO before that? The Eisner era, they were a cash heavy corporation. They had piles of Benjamins laying around. And they decided, hey, we're going to do what everyone else did, and we're going to go into debt because it seems like the cool thing to do. And that's an Iger legacy that, is just, so yeah, it's financial suicide. Sure. Yeah. That's the financial aspect of it. They're even if they were coming up with a good product, it's not a sustainable, practice.
It's almost like was it the prime real estate of the USA in the noughties where it all went tits up.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like that. It's almost similar to that, but in the entertainment industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just seems to be run on debt.
Well, I think one of the lessons that a lot of these bigger corporations took from the prime, the subprime mortgage collapse was that if you're too big to fail, then the government will essentially
bail you out.
Bail you out, or I mean, it's even worse than a bailout. It's like the government will. I want to call it nationalizing, but it's like the opposite of nationalizing. It's like the government will just open its legs, pardon the the image, and just say, "Come on in, corporation. You're in charge. How much do you want? Belly up to the cash window and tell us how much you want." And so when you have J.P. Morgan doing this, and you have some of these other large banking firms doing this, the companies like Disney and Amazon and Microsoft are like, wait a minute, and Google, they say, we could do this too. We're the America isn't America without Mickey Mouse chaining everyone into a movie theater and making them watch the Black Little Mermaid. So let's do this, and that's what they've done. We can go broke and the government will pick up our tab, especially if we are putting out propaganda that supports the people who are in power, the people who control the supposedly the levers of the treasury. So it's a very sick situation, but it's not one that's unprecedented in world and human history. It's just not one that ends happily for anybody.
Yeah, when 2008 happened in the UK, a few people said you should let some of the banks go down,
Yes,
but they
yes.
were all bailed out in the UK with
Uh-huh.
taxpayers' money. I know that in the States, some of the banks did go down, didn't they?
Well, yeah, Fannie Mae, like Mr. Spock there has said,
Yeah,
Bear Stearns, and the Lehman Brothers banks, but these were sort of like, I don't know how to explain it. If they were like the sports cars or the thoroughbreds or something of the financial industry. They were always on the
right.
leading edge, speeding faster, and so they were going to crash harder. And really, what it was is it's sort of like what happened just now with the Wall Street bets type thing, where the edgier of the hedge funds just simply got bought out by its rival. When they said, "Oh, you're bankrupt, well, we'll recapitalize you," and so J.P. Morgan just took all of Lehman Brothers, took the whole, Bear Stearns house, kicked out a whole bunch of stockbrokers, taught them to code or something, and then brought their portfolio into their own bank. So and there was resistance to that. I mean, I keenly remember this. The U.S. Congress itself said we will not bail these guys out. And the U.S. Congress isn't known for its probity or common sense, but they said there's no way we're going to survive an election if we just throw billions of dollars at obviously failed industries with obviously failed business practices. And so they voted, and they voted not to bail them out, right? And then there was another meeting, a midnight meeting, where the currently campaigning presidential candidates, John McCain and Barack Obama, were all hustled into Washington, D.C. Everyone just was forced to sit down, and the Congress came back the next day and said, we're going to take another vote, and just make sure. And when they did, lo and behold, all the bailouts just started flowing. And it was absolutely infuriating. It was corrupt, as the day is long,
Yeah.
and it was shocking. It was my moment where I really woke up to the fact that things are not as they should be. And that's when I started fighting back as a very mini commander culture, not as a fully formed commander culture.
Baby commander, what, like a lieutenant?
Yes, well,
Lieutenant culture.
ensign culture, yes. Acting ensign culture. I had the little
Yeah,
rainbow
acting
stripes
ensign.
on my gray
Yes,
uniform.
very good.
Yeah. But yeah, it was and so we've just gone further and further down that road, and we've seen echoes of the same behavior, whether it's this election with Donald Trump, whether it's the corona, the coof type stuff. I was very concerned with that the same thing was going on with Brexit back in the day, because I saw a lot of that same, well, we have to talk about it again, and somehow, whether you like Brexit or don't, it was sort of interesting to see that it always came up against that wall and always fell short, always fell short, always fell short of the Remainers sort of winning, after they had lost. For
It's
me, it's that sense of fairness where it's like, if you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. You go home, you try to regroup again. You don't have another
yeah.
vote just because the first vote didn't go the way you liked. That's a very East German sort of way of running a government.
With regards Brexit, it's all
Hmm.
quiet on the Brexit front nowadays. But
Hmm.
I think a big problem with the Brexit, especially after when the people who won the vote by leaving, there's I think there's one thing worse than a bad loser
Hmm.
or sore loser. It's a bad winner,
Hmm.
and the winners just enjoyed rubbing it in in the face of the losers
Hmm.
instead of just yeah, it just they didn't win. Uh, they were just horrible towards the people. Yeah, just sore winners, bad winners,
Hmm.
and I just think with it was it was poorly conceived from day one, and as I've said to many people who I used to work with, it should have been law for everybody to vote over the age of 16. Everybody had to vote, even if you went to the polling station and spoilt your card. That's your choice, but you had to vote. It was one of those once in a lifetime things.
Hmm.
You know, it just had to be. It had to be done, and it had to be done correct, and it just wasn't. And it's like on the radio the day after that people were ringing up and saying, "Oh, I voted um, no, just as a protest vote, or yes, just as a
Hmm.
protest vote," thinking that my vote wouldn't count.
Hmm.
It's like what? Just so yeah, it just wasn't done right, and I voted to stay, but
Hmm.
we are where we are now.
Hmm.
I think Barack Obama said the sun will always rise tomorrow. And while, I was always, it's better to be part of something than nothing.
Hmm.
And yeah, there's a lot of things I didn't agree with the EU, mainly
Hmm.
the red tape and the bureaucracy. Hated
Hmm.
it. Could have been a good thing, yeah,
Hmm.
but
Oh,
just could have been a good thing.
yeah, I'm going to admit that as a um, person of the Anglosphere, that I don't think that I'm going to lump all of us in. I don't think that we really understand Europe, the continent, and vice versa. I mean, we like their food, they like to come and visit us, everyone can get along, but there's a very sort of a different cultural ethos that I've run into in my travels in the continent. That is, it's not like an unbridgeable gap, but when you start putting country to country, you can see how a country like Belgium and the Netherlands could get together a lot better than a country like Britain and Germany, or Britain and France, or
Yeah,
Britain and the Netherlands, or and so um, you know Serbia is better than the UK. But yeah. I mean, and I think a lot of countries, sort of, I guess, not to change the subject entirely, but a lot of European countries that got into the euro, the people sort of regret it now at this point, but they sort of feel like, nah, what can we do? And the British people, uh, I mean, how did that go? I mean, did you guys have a referendum to get into the EU, or was it just sort of
yeah. I mean, it was. I think it was 1973 when it
a?
was
Hmm.
the European Common Market. It
Hmm.
was something. What I understand, it was totally. It was just basically a trading organization.
Hmm.
So it was just kind of like you could basically send things abroad, and all the tariffs and import duties were kind of. It was like a big trading agreement where it was
Right.
all kind of free flowing goods and stocks and things like that.
And that
But it
makes
kind of
sense.
it does, your nearest trading partner and all that stuff, which
Hmm.
yes, I think at the time probably which is why people voted for it, because they could see the ease of convenience buying something from Italy, like food or wines and
Hmm.
things like that, getting them over here, free trade. Yes, fantastic. But I think over the years, it um, mutated into something else, didn't it?
Right.
Where instead of it was just a trading organization, it effectively um, mutated into a political organization.
I'm reading a book currently that's by a gentleman whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce. He's the Hungarian finance minister, I think, or a former
Soros?
Hungarian finance. No, 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 no. Soros is not welcome in Hungary anymore. Um, and this guy basically says that the EU was a good idea when there was a Soviet Union. There was a necessity for England to come together with the continent, for everyone to form a strong economic bloc.
Yeah.
And when the Soviet Union fell, sort of the leadership of the EU itself said, well, we can give up and go home. We can stay the trade union that we are, or we can become a European rival to the United States and Chinese military, or I'm sorry, economic power. We can be the soft power, not the scary guys that America and China are, and sort of lead the world that way. And so that's what they attempted to do. And to do that, you need a stronger central government that sort of forced, countries into something a little more than they had thought they'd bargained for. And his argument, the Hungarian minister's argument, is that that was foolish because Europe, even together, especially very fractiously, was never strong enough to compete with either the Chinese or the United States, and instead
No.
would just sort of end up destroying themselves in the effort. And that's the thesis of his book anyway. But it, I'm yeah. Anyway, we're getting pretty far afield, I guess.
Yeah,
But
as in the layman's terms, like myself, I was all. You could probably just ask anybody in the UK. Free movement of trade, etc. Goods, very very good idea. Controlled immigration, or at least I think that was the main thing about the Brexit. That was the kind of deal breaker. I think a lot of people were, while yes, a country needs low paid immigration to do all the lowest paid jobs, etc., etc. I just think the UK was classed as a 5-star destination
mhm.
over some countries, and
Certainly by the Russians.
and if because basically if anybody was in the EU, they could just rock up to the UK,
Hmm.
and effectively everybody wanted to go to the UK because that was the 5-star destination.
Right.
I just don't think it was realistic to put unlimited immigration on certain 5-star countries,
Hmm.
like Germany, England, and I think if it had been, controlled, I think we maybe would have been in a different position, because it just seemed a little bit unfair. I would say 500,000 people would go to the UK, yet maybe only 10,000 would go to France. But
Hmm.
um,
Well, and then you'd
you
have.
understand what I mean, don't you?
Oh no, I do, and it's even broader than that. I mean, two of the um, what do I call it? Sort of ideas surrounding that I've looked at are British people in particular going to Portugal and exploding the property market there. To the point where a lot of
Yeah,
locals can no longer afford stuff because everything that was normally $45,000 or $50,000 is now, or euros is now like
yeah,
350 euros. And on the other side, I think I've told you I've spent considerable time in the Baltics, and when I was there, I saw something that hadn't really occurred to me before, and that is the negative effects of the EU, sort of Schengen type movement of peoples, insofar as it creates a brain drain and a talent suck, right?
yeah,
Where you have people. So if here's an example. I know a child psychologist in Vilnius, and she doesn't live in Vilnius. She hasn't lived in Vilnius for like 10 years. She lives in Dublin, and she makes 5 times what she would make in Vilnius as she does in Belfast, or I'm sorry, Dublin.
Yeah.
And so her own people and the place where she got her, subsidized education is no longer able to benefit from her wisdom and expertise because she's now over there working for cheaper than perhaps an Irish child psychologist would work for. And it goes all the way down to, concrete layers and things like that. A lot of people's husbands even in that country go and they work in Norway or they work in Germany or they work in Britain, and you've got a bunch of basically single moms that in these countries that don't have dads to raise them, number one, and they're not having the second and third kid because dad's far away, and it's a really negative effect on some of these smaller and poorer countries. This talent and brain drain, and they're just now starting to cope with it and try to figure out how to deal with it. But it was a real shock when these countries, Hungary, Latvia and stuff, came into the EU.
I think looking back, as I said, we're out now.
Mm-hmm.
It is a nice idea of a fully integrated Europe,
Mm-hmm.
but I just don't think it's possible because on a very, very basic level, a tin of baked beans in the UK would cost 24p.
Mm-hmm.
But say in Germany, a tin of baked beans, we'll say, let's pick another country. Greece, a tin of baked beans would cost 78p.
Mm-hmm.
My point is, everything has to be on a level playing field on every level.
Mm-hmm.
Effectively making the continent one big country, whereas the difference in as I said, just a tin of baked beans between two countries is just not a level playing field. While I like the idea of being able to, obviously, like the car industry is very integrated throughout Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and wine and goods and stuff like that. Yes, I just think on kind of goods and trade, yes, excellent idea. Political levels, telling countries how to run their own country, probably not where it should be at.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna agree there with Mr. Cruall. Trading back and forth with sort of reciprocity. An
Yeah.
equal trading relationship is one thing, but when you open it up to trade people, people are not a box of
Yeah.
tissues. They're not a can of baked beans, and they're going to make decisions that either need to be controlled by a central authority, which is a form of tyranny, or they're going to destabilize this perfect cloud-based, imagination-based economy that the economists have come up with, because people are going to make their own decisions and they're going to go different places, and so it doesn't really work. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But Britain's out. Let's see. What does he say? When you think of, I'm just going to read Mr. Cruall's latest post. He says, when you think of the globalist dream of a one world system, it's a nice theory, but it would be run by the worst people imaginable. And that's true.
Yeah.
And that's true, right? The closest that we can get to a one world system is like certain universalist religions, I think. Where if you're a Buddhist from China or a Buddhist from Japan or Australia or America or Brazil, you have that commonality across nations. Or if you're a Catholic, or if you're anything like this, you've got that sort of common bond. But you can't force nations together. They're just too different. They have their own. Even regions within the United States. You're going to find the need for different prices. You're going to find different modes of doing things, different ways of observing the world around you and taking it all in and pricing it. And this sort of one size fits all baloney belongs in Maoist China, with their shitty clothes. That it doesn't belong on a world stage where we can say that all people are, essentially and in every way equal. Does everyone deserve the same equal dignity? Yes. But are cans of beans going to cost different in Greece than they do in Britain? Absolutely. And there's nothing that we can do to fix that wouldn't take away the rights of the people who are actually trying to buy the beans. And now I'm hungry for baked beans.
Yeah, Real Honest, BBQ baked beans, add cheese and Tabasco.
I
I'll
like
agree
it.
with that.
I like it. We're turning into a recipe.
On some nice toasted sourdough bread.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Go on, mate.
No. I was just, I don't want
to. Cockney Spock says, and I agree with him 100% on this. We need more Romanian strippers. Romanian women are the best women.
Perhaps. I'm trying to think. I had a friend who
that's a
married
world currency, is that, mate?
I had a friend who married a Bulgarian, and she was batshit insane. So I don't know. I think maybe the Romanians and the northern climate sort of tempered them a little bit. I'm not sure. I don't think I've run into very many Romanians. They seem like nice people. They shot Ceausescu, so how bad can they be, right? When the rubber meets the road, they know when to pull the trigger.
Maybe one day. Maybe one day when we can sort out all this economic shit, we might all come together.
Maybe.
It's basically all down to economics and money, isn't it? Everything.
Well, everything is economics when you look at it. I mean, economics it defines all of our interactions, and because it is a description of our intrinsic needs, right? We need to have food, we need to have clothes, we need to have water and shelter, and apparently Romanian strippers. And when we have these things, and we'll do what we need to get them, and we'll balance. I need more water than shelter today, and blah blah blah. And that's just how the world works. And each person is going to value everything slightly differently, which is why I'm a proponent of the free market. And not what America's become, because that's completely antithetical to the free market. But Slavko's driving to Romania now. All right.
I saw that. Yes.
But yeah, it's all down to economics, and that's the problem. That's why I'm a virulent anti-communist. Anti-communist, because they, at their core, they try to control human behavior through economics. That's the whole ethos, and that's the most evil thing that you can possibly do, is to try to manipulate people at their basic, at the level of their basic needs. I don't know.
Which is, explain to me communism. Just explain it so a thickie like me understands what it is.
Well, I mean, the communist would say, reading from their own manifesto, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, right? Which sounds really good. Everybody deserves sort of a basic start. If you want to describe it in an anti-communist way, you could look at it the way that Margaret Thatcher said, where basically communism is spending money until you run out of other people's money, and
Right.
and that's essentially what it is. You hoard the labor and the productive value of the group of people you control, and distribute it from a central location. And both communist and anti-communist would say, yeah, that's what we have to do. But because you have people somebody in the comments had said something like this, it's like at the very top you have people who are evil and corrupt, and so the more central authority that you vest in the government, the more those evil people who have, psychopathically climbed their way up there are going to be able to victimize the people underneath them. And so you go back to that essential, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. Well, that right there blows equality right out of the water, right? That's saying not everybody has equal ability. But
Right.
now we acknowledge that everyone has the exact same needs. Well, you can't meet the needs of everybody. It's kind of up to, I believe, it's up to an individual to meet their own needs as best as they're able to,
Right.
right? In conjunction with starting in a pyramid system themselves, then their family, then their local group, then their geographic region, then their nation, and so on. Instead of vice versa, where you have the nation collecting everything and then distributing it out, so everyone has equal amounts of misery. Um, you know, but
Kral Birab, communism, Marxism, fascism, socialism. Thanks, but no thanks.
mhm.
Marxism. What is Marxism?
Well, Marxism is just what's the word, like the philosophical underpinnings of communism, the economic uh, practice. So if you want to look at it, it's all the same thing. Marxism is the philosophy, and communism is the economic reality.
Right.
So socialism would be kind of communism light. Either you could put in market elements, or you could have a less tyrannical central government that's controlling everyone's lives. Fascism is similar as well, except that fascism acknowledges strongly that sort of from each according to their ability, saying we recognize that, for example, non-Italians don't have the same ability as Italians, therefore our central government is only going to promote the well-being and welfare of Italians or
Right.
Spanish or Argentines or whatever sort of fascist government you're talking about. But it's all central, authority, and it's all backed up by that philosophical idea of Marxism. All of them. Fascism is a response to Marxism. Socialism is a response to Marxism. Communism is the full flowering of Marxist philosophy brought into the economic and political spheres. So yeah.
So,
Krull says he's seen interviews with folks who have escaped communist countries. They said that the system is not self-sufficient. It's not a self-sufficient system. That's why it falls apart. Or becomes outwardly aggressive. Or even more frequently, it becomes inwardly aggressive, like we see in North Korea or we see in communist Cambodia, and they victimize their own people as the inability to match their fictional utopia weakens the central government. So the central government has to try to shore up its authority by making itself look stronger and better and more scary. And
Slavko says we've had communism. It was fine while we were dancing between East and West, but you can only dance for some time.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Yugoslavia, the land of all the Slavs, was they did the right thing in that they basically played both sides. And countries that have done that have been very successful. In the colonial era, Japan and Thailand did that, and they became very wealthy, prosperous, stable countries. The North Koreans tried that for a while. So Yugoslavia tried that very well. But once one of those superpowers sort of goes down, well, then the realities of the cloud that you've been dancing on sort of fall apart. And in Yugoslavia's case, it fell apart very, very tragically. And a lot of us were sort of witness to that, far or close.
Sklavko says when Berlin Wall and SSSR were done, we were done too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is ironic because the Soviet Union hated no country worse than Yugoslavia, which has sort of bucked their authority and stood outside the Warsaw Pact and thumbed their nose at the Soviets and said, "Neener, neener, neener, we're going to sell cars to America and vacations to Italians," and they did really well at that. But once those sort of forces were gone, they sort of spiraled out very quickly. So,
how did you get? You're very knowledgeable. How did you get into all this?
how did I get into like geopolitics?
This subject. Yeah.
Um, you know, I don't know. It's a good question. I won't belabor the point or bore anyone listening to it, but really, I just wanted to find out the way that the world worked. As a kid, I was growing up, the world didn't make sense to me. I was a very smart kid, and I realized early on that grown-ups, not just other kids around me, were complete idiots most of the time. And I realized that that was sort of a dangerous situation. That meant I had to know what these idiots didn't.
Right.
It's not a very charitable opinion, but it's what I held as a 7-year-old. So, so I'm like, so I have to start reading stuff. And so my dad, who was, going back to college to get his degree at the time, he was like, here's a bunch of books I'm reading, reading about the killing fields of Pol Pot, reading articles by American conservatives and American liberals, and then I had a couple of good civics and history teachers in high school, and I just realized this is sort of where I wanted to focus a lot of my attention, and got my degree and my degrees in history, and traveled the world and just kept my eyes open and my mouth shut, which is hard to believe, but I actually
Always
did
the
that.
best way, probably.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
have you been? Do you understand the red pilled and blue pilled reference of the
sure, yeah,
Matrix?
yeah,
So
yeah.
you've been red pilled.
Yeah, I would say, my process of being red pilled sort of started when my dad handed me um, a column, a newspaper column that an American paleo conservative named Pat Buchanan wrote, and I read it sort of religiously, trying to grow my knowledge of how the world worked. And through that time period, through college, high school, and then when 2008 came along, and I saw the way that the rubber met the road when it came to a political establishment, a cabal, if you will,
Yeah.
sort of a uniparty teaming up with the financial rapists of the country, both liberal and conservative people and poor and rich people, to absolve themselves. And I said, this is crazy. We're living in bizarro world, and set out to sort of fix it. I ran for political office in America, and that was a
Oh
big
wow.
awakening. Yeah, yeah. I won't talk too much about it because
No.
then that would reveal my personality. But
Da na na.
yeah, I'm not prepared to do that. But that was a big awakening too, because it's all phony. The political, politics is a big fun game to the people who engage in it, and they slap each other on the back, and you know and do this and that. I was sitting in a congressman's office in Washington D.C., and he was doing an interview where he was railing against one of his guys across the hall, on the other side of the aisle, the political
Yeah.
aisle. And then together we went down to the congressional cafeteria, which is underneath the Capitol building. They have this big, secret establishment where, they can go and hide and eat sandwiches and stuff. And he sat down at the table with the very guy that he was just, that he had just pilloried on
Right.
national television, and just chatting with them like nothing had happened and slapping
Wow.
each other's on the back. And I'm like going, I mean, I feel very deeply about stuff. I was like, I agreed with this guy, and I agreed that this other guy was, essentially being at least disingenuous and maybe even villainous. I wouldn't sit down and break bread with him. I just wouldn't. I mean, maybe it's a personality flaw, but there's certain things that it's like, hey, I believe this strongly. Well, if you don't believe it strongly, get out of politics. Nobody in politics believes anything they say. They're almost, without exception, liars and frauds. Um, you know, so I don't know. They are almost without exception liars and frauds. And after this sort of debacle in the United States with the election and the impeachment and this and that, like I'm more convinced than ever. I think there might be like two people at the national level who aren't complete sellouts. Um, but anyway, to your original question, so yeah, so I just kind of observed the world around me and realized that it was not what we were being told. And that's the red pill reference. It's like he gave Neo the red pill, and he said, "You're not gonna
Yeah.
see things the same way. You're gonna see behind the curtain." And now I do. It's a sham. It's kabuki. It's
Um,
it's not something to be trusted. They are actors, Cruel.
Yeah,
They,
I
they're
was
they,
going to say the same thing. They sound like
they're
they're just
very
sounding like performers,
yeah.
Commander.
Look, there's a good quote. I wish I had coined it that says that basically politics is Hollywood for ugly people, and that's it. They are ugly,
There you go, folks.
actors, and not particularly even good. Swalwell can't even hold in his passing of gas on national television. So,
Oh dear.
I mean, it's just that. And so for example, going on that actor thing, when Trump comes along, he is in essence an actor. I mean, he's
Was
a
he like John
businessman,
Wayne? Was he like
but
John
he's
Wayne?
well. I think John Wayne had a lot more, what's the word?
People who
Uh,
liked him.
yeah, yeah. I mean, John Wayne was not a blowhard. I mean,
Right.
Trump has whatever he's like in person. His persona that he's actively cultivated is that of a bloviating jerk, and he does a very good job at it. He is an actor, right? And he's just better at acting than all of the other people in Hollywood. I mean, sorry, in
Freudian slip.
yeah, better than half the people in Hollywood. That's why he has a star on the square.
Yes.
But also in Washington, and and they're not capable of going off script, whereas he's an improv specialist. If we want to take this metaphor as far as we can go, and their script is written by a bunch of 20-year-old, pimple-faced, suck ups that sit in these congressional offices and pump out the same sort of crap. The reason somebody says AOC down there, yeah, the reason AOC sounds slightly different is because she actually writes her own crap and then smokes it, whereas most of these people
Who is
just,
AOC?
it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's a Marxist congresswoman who came from New York City.
Allegedly.
Uh, well, I mean, yeah. She's from somewhere, outside the city and is sort of carpetbagging, but she's an ideologue basically, and of which we're going to see more in American politics, and hopefully not, in European politics, because it destroys the stability. But we talked about that in our last week. Yeah, we talked about upcoming civil wars and things like that.
Yes, I
You
think
can't
you'll be going to war. It's only a
you
matter of
can't.
time.
Oh yeah. No, I agree. I'm going to keep banging that drum until it comes true, and then I'll say, hey, it came true. Commander Culture knows of which he speaks. The reason I like MC, a new person here, MC. The reason I like movies and TV and not politics in reality is because I already know the stories are fake in movies and TV. Yeah, well, in politics it's fake as well. I mean, it's as fake as it can be. And that's the real scary thing, because it shouldn't be fake. These if you want to be a leader, you should be somebody who has passion. If you want to be a statesman, you should be somebody who has gravitas, who has intelligence. None of these people are intelligent. They're extremely mediocre intellectually as well. I mean, extremely mediocre. And even the people who were lifted up as champion type intellectuals, like the John Boltons and the Hillary Clintons and stuff, I'm pretty sure I could run circles around them, talking geopolitically, if I had the same level of intelligence briefings as they do. And I'm just a random schmuck with a microphone. So
and a helmet.
And a helmet. Yes, I have my white helm. So
have you sorted the Harley Davidson out yet?
Not yet. I'm waiting for them to sponsor me. I mean, we'll see how that goes.
That'd be
But
amazing.
it would be where my fortress is located. I don't have easy access to Harley Davidsons of any stripe, let alone the perfect white and chrome one. But it's on the to-do list.
You could come down the mountain on your Harley Davidson, like Moses came down the mountain in his triumph.
Well, I think, if I was to have, speaking of Hollywood, I think the coolest thing to do would be to come out at full speed from the back of a C-130 transport plane that's skimming a runway, and then just bam, hit the ground running like, Nicolas Cage or Arnold Schwarzenegger or something, and then keep going, machine guns blazing. But, that's just that's just my little fantasy.
Politics, Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
It's all show business, isn't it? Isn't it?
It's all tawdry show business. Yeah. It's not even the quality stuff that you'd see at a local theater.
And they've all kind of just merged into one this last few years.
Mm-hmm. The media, the financial world, the propaganda arm, which is the news and the Hollywood, and the political structure are all sort of merging into a pillar of centralized tyranny.
Do
And a lot
you
of people are
think,
cheering it.
we'll finish off on this question. Do you think people are taking the red pill and waking up finally?
Absolutely. More and more people every single day. Um, you know, for reasons too numerous to count. You know, whether it's something in their own life that they encountered, some kind of nastiness in the workplace or some kind of relative going off the rails, whether it's stuff that they see in the news or whether it's the disconnect that they see between what they know is reality and what they're being told on television. More and more people are realizing that they are in trouble every day. The question is whether it will be a sufficient mass of people, a critical mass, to allow this, frog to jump out of the pot before it boils. That's my concern. Because here's the thing: when we look back through the arc of history, we see that tyranny and slavery to power are the norms in history. Freedom of money, freedom of travel, freedom of expression of any kind are extremely rare throughout the span of history, here, there, and everywhere. And so it's not unusual. It's not hard for me to visualize that we could be going back to that at any time. Ronald Reagan said that tyranny is only one generation away. And if we don't constantly maintain our vigilance, we will slip back into it in one form or another. And so the more people that get red pilled, the more people that you and I and, Critical Drinker and Doomcock and culture warriors like that are able to reach, the more people are going to realize all is not right. I have my own political opinions. You have your own political opinions, but we're not really here to convince people that our political opinions are the only way. We're here to convince people that the direction that we are heading as a civilization is the wrong direction, and we need to collectively work to put on the brakes, unless we want to, end up with no flush toilets.
As I have said many times, I've got more centrist over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I was left when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And just 52 years of life makes you realize most of it is complete bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just people wanting to feather their own nests,
mm-hmm.
or shove their agenda down my throat, our throats. And it's all navel gazing, pettiness, scrabbling around in the mud.
Mm-hmm.
And I want something to work for everybody, and I want us to go to the stars. I don't want all this shit.
No.
I want us to go to the stars.
We need to go to the stars.
We do.
It's our destiny, as a civilization, as a species, even. We explore, we move out, we make things around us better. To support a base to move on and take that betterness somewhere else. All this ugliness, all this postmodern baloney, all of this nihilist crap, it enervates and erodes our spirit of adventure and exploration. And we need to look outside of this pettiness, if for no other reason than that we, the people who have taken the red pill or whatever you want to call it, can escape. And and move out beyond this sort of crabbed, gross pettiness that we find ourselves engulfed in.
Our time on this planet is limited. It's finite because obviously, if the sun goes pop, which it will eventually, but the problem is these fuckers, they just have us scrabbling in the dirt up until then.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, it just be the same old bullshit, and they
It
just
will.
don't see the bigger picture, and that's what fucks me off.
Well, because human nature, at its essence is, I don't think is going to change. I think, and so what I think we have to do is give as many options as we can for people who feel one way or the other to go in opposite directions peacefully. It's like, you know and we don't have that option anymore on this earth. We've explored all aspects, we've gone everywhere that we can. There's no, back in the 1600s, people who felt a different way could get on a boat and they could come to the new world. you know and a lot of them did, and that bought us another couple hundred years, because all the crazies in Europe went to America, and all the crazies that had come to America were able to sort of sort out our business, over this sort of vast continent. Um, and that's not to say that bad things didn't happen during that time, but I'm not here to talk about that necessarily. But we have to do that same thing now with the stars. And they're there for us just to grasp. I mean, I was reading a news story the other day that says that scientists have discovered what a generic nerd like me would basically describe as a hyperspace, um, conduit in outer space. Like an area where
See,
time and
that's
space is
exciting.
distorted. I know, I know. There's more and more scientists coming out looking at the data of that Oumuamua object
Yeah,
that slingshotted past the sun, and saying there is no way that is a natural phenomenon.
but
Whatever that is, it wasn't natural. And so there's a lot that's out there that we're just about ready to grasp.
but
And
some people saying you're an Eastern phobe, to coin a phrase that excites them. It's like, what? What
well,
fucking planet are they living on?
and I would give them their own planet. I mean, they can call each other names until the sun dims, and the heat death of the universe approaches. I mean, they can do that if they want.
But
But if they,
I
Mhm.
will say, Commander, just as you saying that, you're falling into their trap by kind of they're calling Eastern phobes to people, but you're kind of falling into their trap by saying, well, they can live on their own planet. I
Well,
don't
they
think
can.
I
I,
don't think it's about that. It's about everybody coming together, and we're
well,
just
but here's the thing, Mr. Brown. I don't think that people are capable of coming together,
they are not.
overall, right? I mean, in certain groups, to a certain critical mass, they are, and those critical masses of people should be allowed to form. That's what a nation is. It's a group of people, to larger and smaller degrees, who agree on a general credo, on a general, modus operandi, a way of,
Yeah,
a modus vivendi, I guess you could call it. And sort of, if you feel some other way, then go somewhere else. It's like, it's somebody was talking about immigration earlier and saying, well, I'm not just going to let any Tom, Dick, and Harry into my house. Well, it's the same thing with, with
it is,
attitude.
mate.
If
Yeah,
somebody's going to come and say, well, you're an Islamophobe, and throw dirt clods in my face and call me names because I read a history book or because I like a certain movie, then they can just kind of go away. This is not the party for them. We're about moving onwards and upwards. And we see what happens, Mr. Brown, when we allow these people into our little groups. They turn Star Trek, which is the most optimistic, uplifting, towards the stars, humanity
yep,
does come together sort of
yep.
story, into the most crass, cruel, degraded, debased shit that has ever, been shown on a screen. And it was like, you know it I can't work with people like that, right? They get into your head, and they start making you think like them. Already in the West, people like you and I, even, and people of, who are just walking through their normal life, self-censor. We don't say, oh, I can't talk about that. Oh, I don't want to hear that. I don't want somebody to hear me say that. Why are we afraid of talking about the things that we want to talk about, or the things that we find interesting, or the things where somebody might not find common ground? I'm happy to talk to you about your journey from left to center, and somebody might want to talk to me about my journey from center to right. I don't know, but we can do that with respect.
We are
And
mature enough, my friend.
we are, and that's the problem. If somebody's immature, I don't know how it was in Britain, but in America, whenever a family gets together, you have two tables. You have the adult table and you have the kid table. And if somebody's going to act like a kid, you put them at the kid table.
Yeah.
Because the adults have a conversation that needs to be had, or memories to be rehashed, and they don't need somebody spilling applesauce down their shirt every couple of minutes. And so
these narrow-minded people don't think they are the problem, but they
no.
are.
Oh yeah. I agree, because narrow-minded people can't have a broad discussion. What broad-minded people can have a broad-minded discussion. And when you limit what you can actually talk about, you are by definition narrow-minded. Right. And you see these people, it's like different, it's like different shades now. Now it's like the people who want, women in men's sports fighting against the people who want men who have transitioned to become transsexual women in women's sports, fighting against each other in this very narrow band of sort of more or less irrelevant, discussions. And where does that get them? Nowhere. But in a state of anger and envy and disgust, and we don't need that. We need to go up and out and make the world better in the process. I think that when immigrants left Europe and came to the United States, it made Europe better as well, in a way. And it made America better. It improved both people's livelihoods. It improves both people's experiences, and I don't know.
We said on a previous stream that some of these people need, especially the younger people, need a little personal tragedy in their life, just to make them realize, to see the bigger picture, what's important.
Well, you need adversity. You need adversity. Well, I don't know if I'd go so far as to call it tragedy or something, but some kind of adversity, and that's if nothing else. I mean, I led what an SJW would call a fairly privileged childhood, in that I had a mother and a father, and my dad had a job, and my mom made me sandwiches, and I got to visit my grandma every once in a while, and it was very nice. And so, how did I experience this adversity? Well, a lot of it was vicarious, right? I would read books that had characters that went through that hero's journey, that went through that arc. I would watch Luke Skywalker go from a farm boy to a Jedi Knight. I would watch, Robinson Crusoe go from, a hardy seafarer to somebody who's barely clinging on to life on an island, or Captain Ahab go from, this normal sea captain to a crazed maniac and taking his ship down with him. And and we're not being allowed to view adversity. That's what this whole thing is with the stupid new Star Wars movies with Rey and all of this. It's not allowing people who would otherwise become Star Wars fans to see somebody go through adversity, while telling them at the same time that their entire life is nothing but adversity caused by one particular group of people. It's wildly toxic to civilizational stability, not just and personal psychology. But I agree.
Cruel Birab says something humbling, perhaps.
Sure.
My point was when my mother died, and it was the last time I saw her, etc., etc. It's things like that which, for me, matter in life. Not all this petty shit, but because they're so young. They're so young. They've got smartphones. They think they know it all. They've had parents telling them for a lifetime they're special and never saying no, etc., etc. It's created monsters, and I blame the parents.
I do too. I do too. Um, you cannot but blame the parents, and that's even on an individual level. I mean, I was just this very day, I was speaking with my dearly beloved about one of her insane cousins, and who does not raise her children right. She was complaining basically that her kids play too many video games, and it's like, well, that's your issue. If you're a 40-year-old woman being bossed around by a 7-year-old boy, um, you are the problem.
Yeah.
You are the problem. I want to continue on that topic here. Because I don't know if you guys, the viewers here, caught Critical Drinkers and Nerdrotic and Doomcock and Az went over the Star Trek V, The Final Frontier.
I've
In a
not
long
seen it.
review. It was good, and what it did is it caused me to go back and rewatch that movie. I haven't seen it since I was a kid, and
Yeah.
one of the most important. I mean, I got a lot out of it when I was a kid, but I got completely different things out of it as a grown up looking at it. And one of the most important things that's poignant to this conversation is when Cybok tried to take Captain Kirk's pain away. Captain Kirk rebuffed him, and he said, "No, I need my pain." you know and that was, I thought that I didn't get that when as a kid, but as an adult, and as we're having this conversation, that's what we need to remember the times that we faced adversity, that we were humbled, the times that we were pained, because that's what causes us to
To
you know
grow.
to be a better person, to improve not only ourselves but the world around us. And that's at essence what Star Trek is about. And that's exactly what at the very best, at the most charitable I could possibly be, is what these SJWs are trying to be, is Cybok, taking away the pain of these people by saying that you're a
Brainwashing.
victim, by and brainwashing, right? And but people need their pain. That's what makes them human. That was what made Data, it made it so difficult for him to understand humanity, because he didn't experience fear and pain. And I mean, one of the most uh, important for me anyway, Star Trek episodes was the one where Data built Lal, right? And at the end, when she was dying, he couldn't even feel sad for the fact that his daughter was dying in front of his eyes. And if he could have, he would have grown.
Yeah.
And when Lal says, I will feel it for both of us, right? And she grew even as she was dying. Well, there's nothing what's worse than dying. There's nothing worse than dying, but she was still growing as a person as she was dying. And that's the last thing that these people want. They want to literally take our humanity.
They
You know,
feel they feel invincible. They just feel invincible because it's their age.
hmm
They've never been. They've never been. Everything has been put on a. They are the most privileged of all,
well, I
and they
don't know
go
about
accuse
that.
and they go well, and they go accusing other people of being privileged.
This
We're
is
all
true.
privileged.
I don't, and I can't speak for any other country, including Britain, but I can tell you that, the generation that grew up after World War II, the boomers, they grew up, the world, talking about economics, every American competitor had been bombed to smithereens, and every American ally was literally, handing America platters full of gold. And these kids grew up in that sort of environment where there was nothing that, no adversity whatsoever. They created an environment where, millennial kids and now the Zoomer kids, they do have adversity. There are incredible sort of economic trials that stand in front of them, so sociological and cultural difficulties that lie in front of them. But the problem that I see is that they're being told that these are all person X's fault, person Y's fault, person Z's responsibility. That all of this stuff that's befalling them is can be blamed on someone else. And so it is very like Winston Churchill said about socialism. It is I'm going to paraphrase, it's the philosophy of greed. It's the theology of envy, and that's what they're being fed by
Yeah.
these sort of Marxist people. I
Good job.
wouldn't say that they were privileged. I'd say that they're extremely victimized, but somebody is telling them the wrong people, who are victimizing them. I mean, you and I can name the victimizers, and we can point at them on national television, but they're being told that their victimizers are somebody else, and they're too ignorant, which is different than stupid, to be
Um,
able to suss out exactly who their victimizers are.
Corral says, when you are young, you think you know it all, but in reality, you know nothing. Difference between them and us, Cruel, is that we didn't have smartphones when we were younger. The loaded gun of a Twitter account.
Mm-hmm.
MC, personal tragedy has been my wake up call and forces you to refocus on everything.
It does.
Refocus on the important stuff.
Mm-hmm. On what really matters. You see
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
what can go away and what can't. What's superfluous and what's necessary. And we a lot of people are losing sight of that because they're not being allowed to have their personal tragedy. you know
And as we said on a previous stream, we are doing all this for the benefit of them, but they're just so stupid. They can't see it. And
hmm
in 10, 15 years' time, they're going to be the ones who, if they win, they're going to have to deal with all this. And it is reap what you sow.
well, yeah, and I think my philosophy on that is it's not going to get to that point, that there's going to be a
Hopefully.
break. Well, I don't know about hopefully, because I mean, I don't know. Hopefully, it goes back to the way it was, and everything's going to be very nice. But I mean, if the system breaks to the point where they won't have anything to pick up, bad stuff can happen. And I always think back to wars. It's been a long, long time that we haven't had a war, and it's due just based on human behavior and human nature, reading from history. Um, and that's a sad thought to me, because none of these people will know what hit them when it does. They're going to be so busy focusing on their navel and the microaggressions that
Yeah.
it's offending them with, and and then they're going to get nuked or something. And it's just like, that's a sad portrait, the portrait of a fool.
It's only a minority of the general world population, isn't it?
That's taking the red pill, or what?
That's these little SJWs and Twitter
Oh, it
warriors and
is.
keep,
It
but
is.
but for some reason they are being listened to the most.
They have the loudest screech.
Yeah, like
People who
little
have,
petulant children.
right, people who have decorum, people who have maturity, are not going to sit there hollering into microphones, lying on national television, abasing themselves before a corrupt power structure. Instead, people like us are going to sit here in a staid, mature fashion, discussing,
There you
how
go.
we can
Told you
help and
so.
where we can go better. So, you know, um, it's just, it's kind of like, I always sort of laugh. The word Bolshevik means majority. And the Bolsheviks were not the majority in revolutionary Russia. They were a minority, but instead they called their political opposition the Mensheviks, the minority. And everyone came to believe that the Bolsheviks were actually the majority and the Mensheviks were the minority, even though it was the opposite. And, power was just sort of gradually ceded to them because, well, we want the majority to be, to have its say. So, yeah, I and that's what these SJWs essentially are, is, Bolsheviks, and they don't control anything. They don't even they can't even control their own attitudes, their own emotional continence, let alone, you know, uh, a job, or a government, or anything like that. So we come back full circle to our original discussion of Star Wars and what's happening with that, and we're just seeing the ultimate fruits of complete incompetent ideologues attempting to wear the skin suit of a great brand that they've damaged. You know,
I think Star Wars has gone.
it's gone for
Um,
me. It's gone for me, and it. I mean, I'm not gonna try to be in before anyone else, but Star Wars took a real serious hit even back with the prequels for me, and we've sort of discussed that. But I was willing to enjoy the extended universe for what it was worth. And and the first, whatever they called this, episode 7 or whatever, I can't even remember the name of the movie. I'm just like, I'm done. This is not fun. This is just like watching them flogging the corpse of a beloved uncle or something. So
yeah, the Mandalorian, it it just gave somebody kind of a token gesture of Star Wars,
mhm. Well, they didn't.
um, and they
I,
fucked that up.
they did. Oh, they did.
So
We've talked about it
she
before. I haven't.
fucked,
Pardon?
she, KK fucked it up.
Oh, she did. Well, yeah. Who was it? I was talking, yes, and it was basically like, saying George Lucas, should have handed off his legacy to somebody that cared about it, the same way that like Christopher Tolkien cared about J.A.R. Tolkien's
Or got
legacy. And
somebody to run it for him.
and but he thought he was. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy must have made an impression on him,
Ah,
as somebody who cared about the franchise, as somebody who could understand the fan base, as somebody who would take his stories on. And it was a complete farce. She was a Grima Wormtongue, if we want to keep going with the Lord of the Rings thing. And obviously, the worst thing that could ever happen to it. But again, we got to blame the adults, right? Bob Iger should have fired her years ago. Just taken her contract, torn it up, cashed her out, and said, "Excuse me, we're going to start building, this franchise back up." But he didn't, because
negatives.
I don't know. I
She's
mean,
got negatives.
she's got the negatives.
Dirt. She's got dirt on Hollywood.
She must. She must. She must. Yeah.
We'll just finish off. Do you think Disney would ever go under?
Um, I don't know. I mean, obviously, nothing lasts forever, but as a brand, they are. From what I see, they're completely devalued, and every business decision they make brings them less and less value. So at some point in time, will they be bought out by a more vibrant competitor or a more powerful competitor, maybe
Amazon.
Amazon? Yeah, Amazon's what I was thinking. The answer is probably yes. It may be that, may be even what they're aiming for. I don't know if you're following comic books or how much Gary's been talking about it, but basically, DC Comics has just completely gutted their comics book division, and they're owned by a larger company. Gosh dang, I can't remember the one. But basically, it's like, sorry, comics aren't profitable anymore. It's not something we want to do. And it's like, what are you talking about? Comics are where all of your great movie ideas come from. So they've killed the goose that laid the golden egg, and then the top brass sold out to a larger corporation for a huge sum of money. And they realized the writing on the wall years and years ago at DC. And I think that Disney is kind of in that same stage where you have a lot of people who are like, "Oh, Warner Brothers owns DC.
Yeah, I
Thank
was
you."
going to say, I thought it was
Um,
Warner Brothers. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And you've got the same, I think, sort of idea going around Disney, where everyone's like, "Well, geez, I mean, we're not even profitable. We're $100 billion in debt." And so they're looting the company just like a good Russian oligarch after the end of the Soviet Union. And they're once the corpse is bled dry, they'll sell it off as a skin suit to some other corporation that'll try to inflate it with air, make it look alive for a while, and the properties will just have lost incredible amounts of value. You and I first started talking, I was talking about the James Bond franchise that they couldn't even get Netflix, I think, to buy for
Yeah.
a paltry sum. That's James Bond. That's the most successful movie franchise in history, I think. And it's like now nobody wants it because they've shat on it so much. And James Bond hasn't been dealt a fraction of the damage that all of Disney's properties have. I'm not even talking about Star Wars. I mean, you look at all of their other properties, whether it's Marvel, whether it's some of their legacy cartoons that they keep screwing up, and it's just like, yeah, it's the classic sort of scenario of vulture capitalists coming in, gutting the place, and
Yeah.
eventually trying to sell it out. Now, there's plenty of normies that are out there subscribing to Disney Plus, and I see them all the time. Oh, this is so great. How do I get on Disney Plus? And it's like, but eventually one by one, those people will be like, hey, how come they deleted this scene? Hey, how come I can't watch, how come the crows aren't in Dumbo anymore?
Yeah.
Or how come, X, Y, and Z, and the audience is just going to disappear and they'll be sold out.
Yes, it's on its way out. Shall we call it a draw there, my friend?
We absolutely can. Yeah.
I think you nailed that one, my friend. Well done.
Well, thank you. You weren't so bad yourself.
I think I was a spectator on this one. It's nice that you come on these because it's really great to get a different perspective of everything, really. And as I said, my friend, you're a very knowledgeable man, and we love you coming on here. So I do appreciate that. Thank you, my friend.
Hey, well, thank you for having me. I'll try to be on every Friday that you'll have me. I would encourage people, if you like what you hear here, go onto my channel. I'm trying to get up to 100 subscribers before I start doing my own live streams.
Same here, mate.
So yeah, we'll bolster each other up and bring our own viewers into the other, and get this thing off the ground.
Yeah, you and Cockney Spock should do a one-on-one at some point, and yeah, I think he'd give you a good run for your money. So
yeah, he's sharp.
I will put Commander's link to his channel in my description at some point soon. Yeah, Commander is very, very good on his political stuff and what's going on. So I do thank Commander. Everybody in the chat, you are wonderful as per usual. All the regular faces, thank you for popping in. I think we're going to be on tonight at 2000 hours GMT with a bit of a Friday fun show. So if you can pop in then, that'd be great. Once again, thanks to Commander for popping in. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Bye. Adios.